and good evening. I consider this Masechta to be one of the hardest Masechtas in Shas. So if you're finding it hard, then you're right with me. As we welcome in Ben Zion Cohn, Stephen Holtzman, Michal, Aaron Swade, Mel Zachter, A.B. Spry, Baruch Ian, Dr. Guy, Irving Fishbaum, Menachem Yomansky, Mo Kushner, Inmate of the Month, Shalom Fogel, Nachman Chapler, Naftali Javelin, Mo Kushner, Moshe Lehman, Yitzi Fuchs, A. Barbach, Rabbi Kranz, Ilya Shutman, Shelley Zeitman, Pesach Segelman, Yudah Tov, Sandy Grunfeld. We are dedicated by A.B. Spry, who is dedicating all the Bavas so that all his children should be healthy Bavas. And thank you, A.B. I received the check today. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. And also...
Boy's going to be Bubbies? What's his deal? You're welcome.
By Michal Avram Chavin, also to support the efforts of Torah, and that they should continue with Gesund, all of us. And we learn from Meir Ben Chaya Sarah. As we start, by Omer Rabbi Lazar, 18 lines from the bottom of Daf Zayin Amud Beis. 18 lines from the bottom of Daf Zayin Amud Beis. We did leave a little bit over last night. Last night was kind of a busy night for me. It took us 3.5 hours to get to Monroe. And then in that pouring rain, we didn't get home last night till 1 a.m. But Baruch Hashem, again, I recommend, if you want to watch something interesting, then tune into my YouTube channel, where it's called Chizik to the Incredible Monroe, Hatzalah, and Their Amazing Wives. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, subscribe to it and hit like, and then they'll send you a whole bunch of other of my shiurim. I have now over 750 shiurim on YouTube already. So the Gemara now says, you should know that every star has a typhus and a tyrif. The typhus is the boilerplate of the star, and the tyrif is the essence of the star. Now, the Rishonim say both the typhus and the tyrif have the names and the amount. The difference is that the tyrif also has the date, while the typhus doesn't have the date. So now let's see the Gemara inside. Amar Rebbe Lazar. The machlokes, where they're both holding the star, where, Marshall and Shelley are both holding the star. Machlokes b'sheshneim adukim b'typhus, where they're both holding on to the boilerplate, u'shneim b'tyrif, or they're both holding on to the essence of the star. Aval echad aduk b'typhus, but if Shelley is holding on to the boilerplate, the echad aduk b'tyrif, while Marshall is holding on to the essential part, zenoitel typhus, Shelley is entitled to the boilerplate, the zenoitel tyrif. We'll see what the difference is. Rabbi Yochanan says, L'olam chalkin, they divide it equally, v'afilu echad aduk b'typhus, v'echad aduk b'tyrif. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan doesn't seem to be fair. We said that when two people hold on to a talus, each one gets what they're holding, and they divide the rest. So if Shelley is holding the tyrif, why would Rabbi Yochanan say it's equal? He has the tyrif, while Marshall only has the typhus. Says the Gemara, so the Gemara says no. Here it's talking about Loitzricha the koi Torah bei mitzay. The essential part is in the middle. And so the Gemara says, well, if it's in the middle, then they surely divide it, because Shelley is holding one end and Marshall is holding the other end. They divide what's in the middle. Iachi Maila Memra says, the Chiddush is where the Torah is closer to Shelley. Loitzricha, the Chiddush is the Koi Torah Bein Mitzay, where the Torah is in the middle. Iachi Maila Memra, if it's in the middle, they should split it. Loitzricha the Mikra of Legabi Dechad, it's closer to Shelley. Mao the same Amalei Ploi Kachi, so divide it down the middle, and since the Torah is closer to Shelley, Shelley should get the Torah. Kamash Malon the Amalei My Chazis the Palgas Hachi, why do you divide it along the length, and then excuse me, in this case it would be along the width, and that since the Torah is closer to Shelley, he gets the whole Torah. Plagachi, divided along the length. And if you divide it along the length, they both get half of the Torah. So therefore, it's awarded to both. So now the question is, what's the difference if you get the Taifas or the Torah? Both have the amount. And here, in this case, Marshall owes the money to Shelley. Right? So the question is, did the document fall from Marshall and he already paid it, and Shelley returned him the document and it fell from Marshall, or it fell from Shelley and Marshall didn't pay yet? Right? So the din is that they split it. But what's the difference if there's a Tairif or a Taifas? The difference is that the date enables Shelley to take from creditors. Excuse me, the date enables Shelley to take from purchasers of Marshall after the date of the document, because that means he has a prior lien. So if somebody purchased something from Marshall after that, so then he would be able to seize from the property that Marshall sold. If Shelley doesn't have the date, then the shtar is worth less because he can't collect from mortgaged properties. And says the Gemara, the Gemara explains this. Says the Gemara, Amalei Rav Achim Difter Ravina l'Rebbe Lazar Dama Zen Neitel Taifas v'Zen Neitel Tairif, that Marshall is entitled to the Taifas and Shelley is entitled to the Tairif. Lamalei, or according to Girsa Taifas Lamalei, what's the worth of the Taifas? We say that he takes the Taifas. Does it mean that he takes it to use it as a cork? Amalei l'dmei. No, it means for its value. The Amar Hachi. Shtara de isbeizman kamashavi. A shtar that has a date is worth more, because you could collect from the mortgage properties that are after that date, because the buyer saw when he made a title search that Shelley had a lien on it, and therefore he knows that the land is liable to pay for Shelley's loan. So if it has a date, it's worth more. The less Beizman Kamashavi, so Bishtar is Beizman, because the shtar that has a date Govi Mimishabde, you could collect from mortgage properties. The Idach, but if it doesn't have a date, like Govi Mimishabde. So therefore, Yov Lehaich de Beni Beni. They split the loan, but the extra value that it's worth because of the fact that it could collect from mortgage properties, that's awarded to Shelley if he has the date, and it's not awarded to Shelley if Marshall, the debtor, has the date. And says the Gemara, V'yachloi kunami de Amran, and when we say you divide it, it means l'demei. It means the value. No, it's if let's say the shtar is 1,000 for a debt of $1,000, they divide the value 500. Because when it says that if Shelley and Marshall are both holding a talis, it means they divide the value of the talis. It doesn't mean that they divide the talis itself. Because if they divide the talis itself, they'll ruin it. They divide the talis, so have to do it. They will ruin the talis if you cut the talis in half. Says, no. Holoi kasha. They could cut it in half and use it for younger people. The chazil ketanim. Remember, this was something that they wore, a cloak. So it doesn't ruin it. They cut it in half and it has value for children. If it was a golden talis, kolkin, says the Gemara, you divide it, children don't wear gold. Have to do it. Says no, royal children do use gold. It's fit for royal children. It says two people riding on an animal. So we say that they divided. You cut the animal in half. Have to do it. You kill it. So Gemara says, Bishlai Matahira, if it's a kosher animal like a cow, it could mean literally you cut it in half. In other words, you shecht it and you divide the meat. Chazi Labasim. Ela Tameya, but if it's a donkey or a horse, have to do it. If you have to sell it for dog food, that's not going to be worth as much. Ela Ladamei, it means for its value. When they divide the value. Hakanami Ladamei. Now the Gemara tells us a very interesting thing. Here's an interesting shayla. I find a wallet in the street, and I say that I'm zoiche in it for Irving Fishman. Can I do that? So you'll say, why can't I do that? Zachin adam shalei b'fanav. You can be zoiche for a person not in his presence. So why can't I pick up the wallet and say I'm picking it up for Irving? It's not so simple. Because there is an opinion that says that you can't be zachin la'adam, you can't be zachin it for somebody else, b'mokum shechav la'acherim, where it's detrimental to others. So when I pick up the wallet for Irving, it's detrimental because Michal Avram was walking right behind me, and he could have picked up the wallet for himself. So picking up for myself, that I could do. But to pick it up for Irving, when it's detrimental to Michal Avram, he could have got it a minute later, that's not so simple. But the Gemara wants to say now that, remember we learned in the beginning of the Sechta, that if I and Abi pick up a talis at the same time, we would both acquire it. But how does that work? In order to acquire an article, I have to do hagva on the whole article. If I do hagva on half of the article, I can't acquire it. So then how do I acquire it? It must be that I pick up half, and in order to acquire it, I say that I'm picking up half for me and half for Abi. And Abi says he's picking up half for himself and half for me. So that way, we all have what's considered a simultaneous picking up the whole item. But you could only do this if you hold that he could pick it up for me. So that's what the Gemara says over here. Let's see it inside. This is really, really interesting. Amar Rami Bar Chama, Zoi Saimeres, this Lumdus shows Hamagvia Metzia L'Chaveira Ikana Chaveira, that if I pick up a wallet for Irving, I can acquire it for Irving. If I can't pick it up for Irving, then if I pick up Talis together with Abi, I have to make a Maisagva on the whole article in order to acquire it. I can't just pick up part of the article. If Abi would let go of it, the part of the article would fall to the floor, so I'm not picking up the whole article. So how could I say I acquired it? It must be that we say that since the two of us are picking up together, I have a mind to acquire part for me and part for Abi, and Abi has a mind to acquire part for himself and part for me. So that way we're both acquiring the whole article simultaneously. So let's see it inside. This talis that I picked up half, it should be considered kamisha menechas al gabe karka. It should be considered like the other half is on the ground. Because if Abi can't acquire it for me, so I'm only making a kinyan on half of the article. Neither of us should acquire it. If you pick it up for someone else, and therefore Abi picks it up. He knows if he wants to acquire it, we're going to have to do teamwork. He's going to have in mind half for him and half for me. I'm going to have in mind half for me and half for him. So that way we both have a kinyan in the whole article simultaneously, and that's how we both acquire it. Says the Gemara, comes along Rav and he says no. Rav has another possible explanation. Rabbi says maybe generally, if I pick up a wallet to acquire it for Irving, Irving doesn't get it. Because it's chavla acherim, it's detrimental to others, and therefore I can't pick it up for him. Here, when I pick up half for myself and half for Abi, there it works. Because migu, since I acquire it for myself, I could acquire it for Abi also. Just to acquire it for Abi, you can't do it. I'm a Rava. Let's see it inside. I'm a Rava. If I pick it up solely for Irving, Irving wouldn't acquire it. Here, the reason why it works is migu de zochi l'nafshei. Since I acquire half for myself, zochi nami l'chavrei. I can acquire the half for Abi too. Now, there is such an idea of migu. Because here's an interesting thing. If I tell Ruvain to steal something for me, and Ruvain steals it for me, I'm not chayiv kefil. Normally, shlucha shaladim k'maisei. But there's no shliach l'dvar aveira. Because we have a cloud, divrei harav, divrei hatalmud, divrei mishayim. Who do you listen to? To God or to me? You listen to God. So therefore, if Ruvain steals it for me, he's going to be chayiv kefil, not me. But if Ruvain and I conspire to steal something in cahoots, and I steal it, half for me and half for him, then Ruvain is liable to half kefil. Why? Why don't we say, ain't shlich l'dvar aveira? How does that work? The answer is that here, since I acquire half for myself, I could also acquire half for Ruvain. That's the migu. Let's see it inside. Teda she'ilu amalu shluchay tseyu gnoivli. If I tell Ruvain, go and steal it for me, the ganav, and he steals it for me, potter. I'm potter. Because ain't shlich l'dvar aveira. But v'shutfin sheganvu, But partners that steal in cahoots, and I steal half for Ruvain, chayavin. Ruvain's also liable. Why? My timer. La mishum damrina, we say migu de zachar l'navshe, since I acquired for myself, zachar nami l'chabre, I acquired for Ruvain. Shmamina, that we say migu. So now here we have an interesting case. This is a more complex case. The whole thing is complex. But this is a more complex case. Amar Rava. Hashta damarta amrinon migu cheresh upikeach. Here you have Chatzkel is a deaf mute. Chatzkel is a deaf mute. And he is very friendly with Marshall. He's very friendly with Marshall because he doesn't have to listen to his stuff, right? So they're drinking partners. That they do very well, right? So
help me.
yeah, so Chatzkel and Marshall pick up a lost article together. Cheresh upikeach shegviu metzia. Mitoich shekana cheresh, since the deaf mute acquires it, kana pikeach. So also Marshall acquires it. Now this is a very big problem. Because remember we said the only way that Marshall could acquire it, he did hagva only on half of the item. The only way Marshall could acquire it is if Chatzkel, the deaf mute, acquires half for Marshall. But a deaf mute has no ability to acquire for someone else. A deaf mute doesn't have das. So, Bishloim a cheresh kana. I could understand that the cheresh acquires it because midrabanan a cheresh could acquire for himself. So he has in mind to acquire half. And he has in mind to acquire half. And Marshall acquired half also for the cheresh. So Bishlai mecheresh kana de kamak v'lei ben das, because Marshall acquired half for the cheresh, and the cheresh had in mind to acquire half for himself. So that works. Ela pikeach b'may kana. But how does Marshall acquire it? He had in mind to acquire half, but the cheresh can't acquire half for him because the cheresh doesn't have das to acquire for somebody else. Ela ema say cheresh kana, the cheresh acquires it. Pikeach loikana, but Marshall doesn't acquire it. But here's the problem. We said that the only reason Marshall could acquire it for the other person, Rava said that Bava Metzia Daf, and the only reason why he could acquire it for the other person is migu, that he acquires it for himself, he acquires it for the other person. But here Marshall doesn't acquire it for himself, because the other half the cheresh couldn't do for him. Oh my migu. So the Gemara tries a desperate answer, but it's really desperation. The Gemara will say that doesn't work. The Gemara wants to say, well, maybe Marshall could acquire it for the cheresh, since if it would be two chereshin, if it would be two deaf mutes, so there each one acquires it for themselves, and migu they acquired for themselves, they acquired for the other person. And since if it would be two chereshin it works, so it works also if it's a pikeach and a cheresh. That's a real desperate migu. Oh my migu de shnei chereshin ba'alma kani. Since if it will be two deaf mutes, so each one is koined for himself. We'll see that's a takon d'Rabbanan that they gave a kinyan to a deaf mute, even though a deaf mute doesn't have das. So hainami kani, so they acquire it for the other one, and therefore, since if it would be two chereshin, it works. So a pikeach and a cheresh also works. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? Hi mai, imtim tzolai magvia metzia lechaveiroi kana chaveiroi. If you say that if you pick it up for someone else, you could be kind for someone else, So even then, Hani Mili, that's where I pick up the wallet for Irving. But Marshall picked it up for himself. And if he doesn't even acquire it for himself, how could he acquire it for the Cherish? He acquires it for the Cherish. That makes no sense at all. Rather, the Gemara says, and this makes a lot of sense, since when Marshall and the deaf mute picks it up, Marshall doesn't acquire it. Marshall doesn't acquire it because he only picks up half. And the Cherish cannot pick up half for Marshall because he cannot acquire it for someone else. And therefore, since Marshall doesn't acquire it, so therefore he cannot acquire it for the Cherish because you don't have the Migu. Therefore, like on a Cherish. So the Gemara says, so then why, if two deaf mutes pick it up, why do they acquire it? Two deaf mutes pick it up, then each one acquires it. Hasam, Tekinu l'Rabbanan, the Rabbanan made that they should be able to acquire it, to loy osili and suye, that they shouldn't come to fight. But here, they didn't make any takana with a pikeach and a cherish, because the cherish will understand if the pikeach doesn't acquire it, then he'll understand that he doesn't acquire it. I should be able to acquire it? Now, we said that we learn out from our Mishnah in the beginning of the Sugya. We said we learn out from our Mishnah that Bava Metzia Daf, so that when Abi and Shelley picks up a beged, how could they acquire it together? Each one is only picking up half. So we said that it must be that since they know they could only acquire it if they help each other, Abi picks up the beged and has in mind half for himself and half for Shelley, and Shelley has in mind half for himself and half for Abi, and that's how they acquire it. But how could you extrapolate? Our Mishnah says where Abi and Shelley picks up the talis and each one says Kula Shali. Each one says I acquired the whole thing. Amalei Rav Achabrei Rav Adel Rav Ashi Diuke Derami Bechama Mehecha. That they're both holding on to the talis. Hasam Haikama Kulashali. Abi is saying it's all mine. Va'ana Agva Kula. I picked up the whole thing. V'hayama Kulashali. And Shelley says it's all mine. Va'ana Agva Kula. So it's not talking about a case where they both picked up only half. Says the Gemara, no, it's from the Yiter of the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah says, and then it says again, and it's the same thing. If he found it, it's all his. So why does it repeat again? Kula Shali. Elam Mishnah Yisayir from the superfluous stanza, Shmamina, that they could both acquire it at the same time. That that if you pick up for someone else, kana chaveira. So the Gemara says no. And on Daf Beis we said Kula Shali is talking about a different case, where Shelley says he bought it from Nachman, and Abi says he bought it from Nachman. The first part is where they both say they found it. You're right. The superfluous stanza is the next stanza. Elamiseifa Zama Kulashali. Abi says it's all mine. Vizama Chetzia Shali. And Shelley says half is mine. So we said Shelley admits that half is Abi's. They're only arguing on the second half. And therefore they split the second half in quarter. And Abi gets 3/4 and Shelley gets 1/4. That's extra. Because that's logical. It follows from the din of the ratio, that we split whatever they're arguing about. Hasulamali, so it's superfluous. Elam and Mishnah Yisera from the extra stanza, Shmamina, Magvir Metzila Chavera, Kana Chavera. That it's possible for them both to acquire it at the same time. Says the Gemara, Bava Metzia, who says that case is talking about a lost article? Dilma b'mekach u'memkar. Maybe it's talking about a purchase. And it's talking about where Abi says he bought the whole thing from Nachman, and Shelley says that he bought half from Nachman. Now, Shelley didn't have to say he bought half. He could have said he bought the whole thing. He's holding half of it. So he's exceeding is the wrong word. He's ceding. He's ceding a quarter to Abi. And since he's doing that by his own volition, maybe we should view him as a Meishav Aveda, as returning a lost article.
Conceding.
Huh?
Conceding.
I think it's exceeding.
Not exceeding.
No, conceding.
No, it could be ceding also.
Conceding. He's conceding, isn't that it?
Huh?
There's no word ceding, it's conceding.
I mean, there is a word conceding, that's for sure. Yeah.
He's giving.
There is a word ceding.
CED.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Zerayim, though. We don't come across that.
No, not S-E-D.
C-E-D-E.
Yeah. C-E-D-I.
When you seed something.
Yeah.
C-E-D-E.
C-E-D-E? Yeah. Seeding?
It's exceed, A-C-C-E-D-E.
Oh, that would be
No, that's something else.
E-I-N-G.
Will prove or give himself.
No, that's something else.
Okay.
Anyway, conceding works also. So the Gemara says, I shouldn't have wasted time with this because now I lost the track of the thought. So by giving Abi the extra right to a quarter by his own goodwill, maybe we would view him as a Meishav Aveda and exempt him from swearing. Because remember, if you return a lost article, you get amnesty from swearing. And that's the Gemara says, if it's talking about a purchase, what's the Chiddush? I might think, that which he says half is mine, he didn't have to say half is mine. He could have said he bought the whole thing from Nachman. So he acknowledged that a quarter extra belongs to Abi. Maybe we should view him as returning a lost article. Says the Gemara, no, we don't look at it that way. We look at it that Shelley is very shrewd. He's trying to get out of an oath. He knew if he would say he bought the whole thing from Nachman, he would have to swear. So therefore he says half to get out of the swear. He's acting shrewdly. He's acting with deceit, our good old Shelley. You know? He's there with this pasted face over there. Savar, if I would say that it's all mine, that I bought all of it from Nachman, I'll have to swear. I'll say I only bought half to have a Kameshav Aveda v'ipata. So again, this stanza is not extra. If Shelley and Abi are riding the animal, they split it. So Sulamali, this l'chayra is the same thing as both of them holding the talis. If you pick it up for someone else, says no, maybe it's just telling you that you riding a donkey is an act of a kinyan. I might think that the only time it's a kinyan if you lead it, and not if you ride it. Elam is seifa. It says bizman shein moedim, if they agree with each other. Oy sheyesh lehem edim, or the witness is cholkim b'lei shvua. Now, if they agree, what's the chiddush? If they both agree that they bought half from Nachman, what's the chiddush? And the chiddush is if they both pick it up at the same time, we don't say that since each one did Hagva only on half, neither require it. But rather we say, Magvir Metzia L'Chaveira, Kana Chaveira. Shema Mino, Magvir Metzia L'Chaveira, Kana Chaveira. Now this Rava says, well, not so fast. Maybe if I pick it up solely for Irving doesn't acquire. Because you can't be Mizaka for someone else when it's detrimental to someone else. Because Michal was walking right behind me, and he could have picked it up. The only reason over here that when Abi picks up half and Shelley picks up half, so the reason why we say that Abi picks up half and half for Shelley, and Shelley picks up half for himself and half for Abi, that they could do that because Migu, the Zachin L'Navshe, since they acquired for themselves, Zachinami L'Chaver, they could acquire for the other. Now we're going to get to the riding question.
But they're each saying that it's sold for them. Why would I have in mind to be safe for AB?
No, that's the safe of the Mishnah is where they're maiden. You both lifted it up at the same time.
Right, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's okay. It's okay. It's good to see that you're alive. The Barry, you're looking better and better.
Baruch Hashem.
B'li ayin hara. I'm telling you, you listen to this year for 2,711 days, you're going to be living another 2,711 days, and then you'll say 3 hadrons. Now, Amar Rav Yosef, Amar li Rav Yehuda. Rav Yosef said that was told to me by Rav Yehuda. Now remember that Rav Yosef cites this in the name of Rav Yehuda because later on he's going to be questioned about this, that he never said it in the name of Rav Yehuda. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar li Rav Yehuda. Shamas minei demar Shmuel tarte. I heard from the master Shmuel 2 halachas. Rachov umanik. Riding and leading an animal. Chad kani. One, if you do it, you acquire. The chad loy kani. And one, if you do it, you don't acquire. V'lo yadana heiminayim. And I don't know which one is which. Now, this cannot be taken as independent, that Barry rides the animal or leads it, because there's no question that if he leads the animal, that's classic Meshicha, and that's certainly a Kinyan. So that can't be the doubt. Hey, Chidami, Ilay Marachav l'chudei u'manig l'chudei, riding it alone and leading it alone. Nobody would doubt that leading it alone is a Kinyan. Leading it is pure Mashiach. That's classic Kinyan. If it would be independent, it could only be Rachavu Dikalamema. And therefore, Rav Yosef would not have had a doubt on which one he said loikana and which one he said kana, if it's talking about independently. Because independently leading is definitely a better acquisition than riding it. El rochav b'mokam manig iboyle. Here, what happens is Marshall is riding the horse, and Barry is leading it. And the question is, who acquires? Says the Gemara, Rachiv b'makam manigi boile. Mai, do we say Rachiv adif? Do we say Marshall is more superior? As wild as that sounds. Do we say that Marshall is more superior? Da toughest pay. Because he's grasping the animal, he's on top of it. He's one with the animal, if you know what I mean. O Dilma, or perhaps Manig Adif. Barry is superior. Why? The Ozla Mahmase, because he's in control to cause the animal to move. He's directing the animal. Amar Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef said, Amali Rav Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda said to me, Nirze Anan, let's do an analysis. The Tanan, now here we're talking about one of the 365 negative prohibitions in the Torah is you're not allowed to ride with a team of mixed animals. You can't ride it, you can't plow with a shor v'chamor yachtov, with an ox and a donkey together. That's called kloyei behema. Just like you can't wear kloyim, wool and linen. Now, hamanig, if you're directing a team of an ox and a donkey, soifeg es arbon, you get malchus. Vayoyshe b'krain, and if you sit in a wagon pulled by a donkey and a ox, soifeg es arbon. Rameir poiter es a yoyshe b'krain. Rameir exempts the one that's sitting because riding it is not considered directing kloyei behema. Umida apik Shmuel v'tani. And since Shmuel switches around the names, and he holds v'chachomim poitrin, so we see that riding is not considered leading kloyim. V'chachomim poitrin es yoshin b'krain, shmami no rochav l'chudei loikani. Riding is not considered enough that you're directing kloyei behema, and therefore riding alone is not kaina. So therefore, where Marshall is riding and Barry is leading, Barry acquires it, Marshall doesn't acquire it, which we knew that would be the conclusion. And surely, if it's riding versus leading, leading trumps the riding. So here, Abaya asked Rabbi Yosef, you said this in the name of Rabbi Yehuda? Amalei Abaya Rabbi Yosef Hazimnin Sagian several times. You said let's analyze. And you didn't say it in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. So Amalei, so he says, Ivra, in truth, it wasn't the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Udacharina Nami, and I remember that when Rabbi Yehuda said it, I asked him, it's not analogous. Because here where Marshall is riding the donkey, he's holding on to the reins. When you're sitting in the wagon, you're not holding on to the reins. Says the Gemara, Udacharina Nami da Amr lehechi pashit mar. Rochav miyoshev. How could you resolve riding from sitting in a wagon? Yoshev leitofis b'moseira. If you're sitting in the wagon, you're not holding on to the reins. Rochav tofis b'moseira. V'amali Rav Shmuel, and he told me, Rabbi Yehuda told me, Rav Shmuel the Imrei Travaya moseira loikani. Just holding reins doesn't acquire. If you give the reins over, if the seller gives the reins over to the buyer, that's a Maisa Kinyan. That's a special Maisa Kinyan called Masira. But just holding the reins is not a Kinyan. Ikadamre, Amalei Abayla Rav Yosef, Abaya asked Rav Yosef, it wasn't that Rav Yosef remembered that he asked Rabbi Yehuda, but Abaya asked Rabbi Yosef, how can you learn out riding from sitting? When you're sitting, you're not holding the reins. But when you're riding, Taifas b'Maisera. Amalei and Rav Yosef told Abaya, Tani Idi, Maisera loikani. Just holding the reins, you don't acquire. Imar Nami, Rabbi Chelboy Amar Rafuna, Moseira mechaveira ikon. If I sell an animal to Gedalia and I hand him over the reins, he's kind. That's the kinyan of Masira. Gemara says that that's one of the ways to acquire a very large animal. It's very hard to pull a very large animal. So you hand over the reins. That's how you acquire it. However, if let's say, who's feeling lucky today? Oh, Chaim Lerner is feeling lucky today. If Chaim Lerner finds a animal or an animal of a dead ger and he grabs the reins, he doesn't acquire. Because you only acquire the reins when it's given over from someone else. And therefore, B'Metzia, by a lost article, B'nichse Ager Loikani. And says the Gemara, my Lashon Moiseira. Why is it called reins? It's called reins because embedded in the reins is the Kinyan. Amarava E.D. Asberli, he was maybe an etymologist. Ka'adam ha'moiser davar lechavero. That's a way to acquire it. Because if you give the reins over to the other person, you acquire it. So, and as the Gemara explains, you could acquire it when Gedalia buys it from me. He could acquire it to Kamas Lechavre because I'm giving it over. When Chaim Lerner picks up a lost animal by the rein, or he acquires it from a dead ger that has no yoshim, man who hands it over there, he should acquire it. So the Gemara asks for the final Gemara of the evening. And Rabbi say, I just want to let you know, a scoop for those that have the WhatsApp, I already sent out a message that right afterwards, we did the Mishnah Yomi already because we're going to learn a chak now. It's high time. It's high time already. People were suing me that I didn't do a chak since I'm in Florida.
Or at least threatening.
Yeah, at least threatening. Michal Avram has this menacing shotgun.
It's too warm down there.
Menacing shot. I want you to know, I took my chok material to Florida. But as Baruch Ian will tell you, I was pretty busy down in Florida.
All cards were full, weren't they?
I played pickleball an hour a day.
Yeah, I saw Rabbi treating Mrs. Wife in a restaurant.
Yeah, that I did. That for sure I did. But anyway, thank you, Gedalia. It's the green screen?
Oh, okay, sure.
I thought that's where you were heading.
That's where I was. This is no.
All work and no play. Oy vey, oy vey.
Now, Baruch Hashem, it was really a good trip. I have to thank Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg for really helping me on the first leg of the trip. He really made it possible, and
It was a real success. Everyone very much appreciated it.
it was, I was really excited to be with the children. I have to tell you that much.
It meant a lot to them. They really, really appreciated it.
Yeah. Next time we got to get more schools.
Ezras Hashem.
Yeah. Anyway. What?
Week does the time change?
Yeah. So Motzei Shabbos is regular 8:15. Next week the shir is 7:45. 15 minutes earlier. That's because Mincha will be 6:45, followed by Mishnah Yomis, followed by Mariv, and I want to make it that it shouldn't be too long a gap. This way, people, if they have to stay in shul for 15 minutes, so we'll get some cake for them to eat and stuff like that, But
Frank's, that'll keep them.